Pivoting from single player to multiplayer is a big risk for any franchise, and the Outlast Trials was no exception. I'm not a huge fan of Outlast as a series per se. As the son of a nurse, I'm not easily grossed out by the sight of blood and gore, and since all Outlast 1 had to bring to the table was a bunch of gory shock value, it came across as a bit of a boring game to me. Outlast 2 was a bit more interesting as it traded away some of the generic body horror in favor of religious-themed horror, which is more up my alley. The Outlast Trials likewise picks yet another different subcategory of horror, being psychological horror in a very clinical sense. The premise of the Outlast Trials is extremely straightforward. The Murkoff Corporation, the extremely dodgy research group with definitely no clear understanding of what the term ethics means, needs human subjects in order to run unnamed and unspecified tests in their new state-of-the-art facility. So they send out a bunch of advertising and you, a homeless person picked off the street, get quote-unquote invited to participate. After some extremely questionable exploratory surgery practices.
This is a collection of your public records, along with the investigatory information about your private life. Well, you've got some secrets, don't you? Naughty. As the restraints make a signature impossible, please acknowledge that you consent to these collections. Thank you. Not bad looking, to be honest.
If you go for that type.
Well, I ain't never been that picky.
I just hate seeing their eyes.
You get sent off to begin the testing process, which is where the core gameplay begins. The Outlast Trials supports anywhere from 1 to 4 players in each team, with players having the option to, when entering the matchmaking queue, play solo, in duos, and trios, or even a quad. It's entirely up to you. Once you pick your team size and what map you want to play on, off you go. The thematic aesthetic of each map you play on does an excellent job of contrasting what would normally be mundane surroundings, such as a police station, orphanage, or amusement park, with ominous overtones that are so melodramatic that they border on the verge of outright dark comedy. Everywhere you look, there are tons of crude humanoid animatronics that reflect back different stereotypes. For example, during the tutorial, the guy whose voice you hear through various speakers, guiding you through the assigned tests, walks you through an outline of your own life, or really the outline of any human's life, with animatronic displays showing your birth, childhood, and even adulthood.
You were born. Maybe the most destructive thing you've done to the world. You have to release the past in order to embrace the future.
So the kids came home.
It's all delightfully twisted to a degree that even Tim Burton would probably admire. Once you get into the multiplayer maps, you see other map-specific themes. Like in the orphanage, you see the nuns as initially innocent and sweet and all the rest at the start of the level. But as you get deeper into that map, you see them abusing the kids and committing a ton of hypocritical sins of their own. At one point, you have to enter a cafeteria and your objective becomes feeding the animatronic kids lunch. You find an enormous cauldron in the kitchen and have to fill it up with 5 large containers of bleach, and then press a button to serve the highly questionable meal to the kids. I don't know, if you're feeding bleach to kids, I think there's something wrong with you. Luckily, they're animatronics, so it doesn't really matter. It's okay to commit war crimes on animatronics. Police stations, at least in theory, are likewise supposed to be centers of safety and protection. While the theme is serve and protect, and here you are pushing a payload, specifically a bound and blindfolded man strapped down in a metal holding chair, down a linear path, pausing at certain scripted checkpoints in order to find keys, in order to progress, before ultimately delivering him to his final destination. It is so messed up. I love it. But that's probably because there's something as wrong with me as there is with the developers who made this game. Each map contains a variety of horrific experimental monstrosities, basically. Unkillable bosses that just stalk you, who will go out of their way to completely ruin your day. As a game almost entirely devoid of either offensive or defensive weapons, your feet and your wits are probably the best key to escaping any enemy pursuit. Most enemies are fairly persistent and will follow you through multiple rooms, and will even climb over or under barriers and obstacles, barring them from you, so you'll have to be smart and quick on your feet if you want to survive such encounters. Even hiding in lockers or other full concealment objects is not a foolproof solution, as enemies will simply rip you out of your hiding spot, throw you on the ground, and then do things to you that I probably shouldn't mention in a YouTube monetized video. The enemies assembled wildly range from being truly intimidating to mildly annoying at best. There was one moment when I was in the orphanage level where a guy was hiding in basically a trash can, and I knew he was there, and I knew as soon as I walked by he was going to jump out and get me, and it was kind of like the FNAF jump scares. after you play them the 50th time. It's like, okay, I'm not scared of you. You're just a complete dick, and I know you're there to ruin my day, and I really don't want you to, but I have to get past you, so let's get it over with. So yeah, there's that. One of the few problems with the maps at present are their respective layouts. Many of the maps often feature rooms that are highly similar, bordering on nigh identical, save for the larger rooms and corridors, which usually stand out as set pieces tying into whatever that map's theme is. This can cause beginners to waste needless time trying to find their bearing. As this game is designed with replayability strongly in mind, it's worth noting that veteran players will have a notable advantage. The problem is that, as the end-of-match individual and team player scores are determined partially by playthrough speed, newcomers will effectively be punished for slower completion time, and as this presents a hazard to the team score, veteran players will be strongly incentivized to kick new players from their matchmaking party from the onset rather than work with them to succeed. In a game all about teamwork as a thematic overtone, the scoring system seems to more so reflect every man out for themselves. It just does not take the theme into consideration. One aspect of the game that also might turn some players off after a bit is going to be the incredibly limited amount of content currently in the game. Yes, the Outlast Trials is an early access title. Believe me, I have reviewed dozens if not hundreds of early access games over the course of my channel's life. I know what early access is. And I know, yes, the developers absolutely can remedy this over time, but that does not change the fact that the game currently costs $30 USD or your regional equivalent, and you can play through all 3 maps currently available in the game in less than 45 minutes total. Outlast 1 and Outlast 2 were both respectively about 6 hours long on average, and they were both $30 as well. Having multiplayer support does not excuse the absence of those missing 5 hours of content. That's a reduction of roughly 80% just to squeeze in some basic networking code. There is no reasonable justification of that. They'd have to squeeze in about 8 times as many maps, aka a total of 24 maps, to roughly replicate that total amount of content. And before anyone tries to argue, well, you can always replay levels here. Fuck off. Fuck off. I'm just going to cut you off right there. Last I checked, you can replay levels in a single-player game too. That is the point of single-player. You can do whatever you want with it. It's your own time. Oftentimes, it's even easier to replay levels in single-player than in multiplayer. If you replay Outlast 2 8 times, you'll have a total of 48 hours of content. If you play the Outlast Trials 8 times, you get around 6 hours, aka the length of Outlast 2 being played just once. No matter which way you try to spin it, the math just doesn't equate. The Outlast Trials is a really hard sell when there's barely enough content in it to distinguish it from the average game demo. The lobby area in between matches definitely goes above and beyond, which is something the rest of the game kind of hit or miss on. The lobby provides players access to NPC vendors capable of providing varied upgrades to your gear and passive abilities. A customizable prison cell that the unseen narrator is quick to reassure you is not meant to look like a prison cell, despite that being exactly what it is. Even multiplayer minigames such as arm wrestling are included, which, I gotta say, pretty cool. But come on, no darts? I mean, it's prison. I get you're not supposed to have sharp objects, but come on, darts, tic-tac-toe, gotta give us some more. The individual cells are really cool. There are a ton of cosmetics you can decorate your confined living space with, as long as you have the currency to do so. Currency you can earn by successfully completing trials, aka missions, and the more work you do into helping your team escape, and the faster you get out of said level, the higher the rewards. The Outlast Trials isn't a game that is necessarily built from the ground up with speedrunning in mind, but again, you definitely will get penalized for excessively slow playthrough lengths. On average, it seemed like the trials I played through were all 10 to 20 minute long completion range, and I would usually walk away with a reasonably high score, usually in A's and B's, although I did get unlucky and have one C during the orphanage level, because me and my team just ran into a ton of bad luck and bad timing, with enemies knocking down quite a few of us, even killing one of us, me, before we were able to do a revive, and that cost us a few points at the end of the match. For what it offers, the Outlast Trials is everything one would expect of a typical AA scale early access game. There's a meager amalgamation of high-quality replayable content, a decent progression system that gives you at least some incentive to play through each level more than once to unlock new abilities and cosmetics, and a intriguing overall gameplay formula and story premise. Its biggest problems at present is the incredibly limited amount of content and a ton of minor bugs and glitches that will never become game-breaking, but certainly at times will break the player's immersion. With a bit of long-term development effort, the Outlast Trials can stand on its own 2 feet as a perfectly legitimate, but largely unremarkable successor to this long-standing niche franchise. If you're looking for a decent AA scale multiplayer cooperative horror game with an admittedly twisted sense of humor, the Outlast Trials definitely isn't a bad pick, even if it's not necessarily going to be one of my go-to games. On that note, that's where I'm going to call it quits for today. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, your support would be enormously appreciated. Subscribing, commenting, giving this video a like, there are tons of ways you can support what I do here for free, and I'm always eager to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. I try to kick off the conversation and hand it over to you guys from there. In the meantime, I will see you all again soon. This is Warrior Dan signing out. Stay awesome, stay safe, and peace out.
This project is sponsored by Campbell Soup.
I wish you could see him! You can't do that! This is what Snigger Fingers get! No, you shut up! You're fucking killing us! Ellen! You're fucking killing us! Don't look at me! Don't look at me! Just leave me alone!
Acting